Alright, so here my friend was demonstrating a trick on how to remove the shim without needing to disassemble the head at all. So it's supposed to be pretty easy if you know how to do it right. It helps if you have the right tool. Alright, so it turns out that most of the shims needed to be replaced. So let's go ahead and break the bolts loose. Alright, now it's time to remove the cam caps as well. I'm going in with a hammer because they're pretty stuck on there. So the hammer will help me in loosening them up. This shim was really on there, but we got it. I like to put the lifter back inside the head so I won't lose any of the parts or lose track of their order. I'm also going to go ahead and wipe the grease off the shims.
One eternity later.
I don't know if you can tell that circle mark right there. I like to use that as my guide when I'm measuring the shim dead center in order to make sure that I'm getting the most accurate reading.
Perfect.
So this measured out 112 thousandths of an inch. You want to mark it just so you know that this is the original one. So we'll just write 12 on it. So now I'm pretty much looking for shims that have the same circumference. So as for this one right here, it measured out 110 thousandths of an inch. So yeah, it's not gonna work. Let's go ahead and go through all these shims to find just the right ones. I know we have a lot to get through, so let's get started. So here, my friend comes up to ask me if I found one yet, to which I say no, not yet. Then he goes ahead and asks me if this one measured out 12, like 12 thousandths of an inch, and I said yeah, 12. And he says, so 112 thousandths of an inch then? And I said yeah, that's what I meant. Then he tells me how here you write their measurements so you can get familiar with writing out the full measurement. He also goes ahead and tells me that what I can start doing is if I need shims for the other lifters, so like the ones I've been measuring, if I know it's going to work for this head, make it a habit to start writing down the measurement on the shim. Like for example, 119 thousandths of an inch, and then you don't have to measure it again. So when I look at the other lifters and I need to look for a specific measured shim, I already have my marked up shims that are ready to be selected. So then my friend comes back and asks me, nothing yet? And I told him, so far I've only found 9 thousandths of an inch shims. And he says, that's the thickest one, and you need to find a replacement for the 112 thousandths of an inch. So we need like 115 or 116 thousandths of an inch to get it to close the gap. Alright, so right now, what we're working on So basically I was getting it confused at first, but now I understood what they meant by that. So I'm going to show you guys right now, but for the numbers, like let's say, so for the intake, we need 6 to 10 thousandths of an inch. But if the valve lash reads over those specs, what you have to do is, I'll give you an example. So for a reading of 11 thousandths of an inch, I need to add at least 2 or 3 more thousandths of an inch. Because what we're trying to do is replace the size of the shims because there's too much of a gap. So going back to the example of the reading 11 thousandths of an inch, it actually passed the 6 to 10 thousandths of an inch target. So to be more specific, there's a big gap in between the valve lash because you have the valve, the solid lifter, and then you have the shim, and then the cam lobe. So what you're trying to do is kind of cheat a little, I guess, with the shims, add more material in order to meet the 10 thousandths of an inch. Because before assembly, I don't know if you guys remember from my previous video, I was working on the Supra. I was cutting the valves to get to the 6 to 10 thousandths of an inch target. But now that it's actually assembled, like the valve springs are in, you have the valve keepers, so it's being compressed now. So it's giving off a different measurement. So now we gotta go based off those numbers now, because that's the final assembly. It's not like in the beginning where the springs didn't have any compression, you know? They weren't under pressure. So yeah, that's what's going on. All right, let's get back into it. So for example, oh, come on. All right, anyways, let's just use this one for example. So we measure the shim. Oh, almost lost this one too. And for this one, it measures 113 thousandths of an inch. So you want to add material. So we're going to get rid of this one. That's the original. And now you want to replace it with 115 thousandths of an inch. So it's the same protocol for the rest of them. Same thing goes for this one. So you have 114 thousandths of an inch. And you're adding 2 more thousandths. So now it's going to be 116 thousandths of an inch. Because the valve lash that we got was 12 thousandths of an inch, which went overboard on the spec. So now what you're going to do is, you don't want to keep cutting the valve stem, obviously. So the next option would be replacing the shim, you know. Or also, you can cut the head of the valves, not the stem. But I guess in this case, we're going to go ahead and touch the shims. Alright. So then yeah. So 3.0, almost ready for assembly. So let's go ahead and swap these out. So just for you guys that don't know, this is intake cam cap number 2. So that one right there is cam cap number 1. And then we can install cam cap number 2 right after. You want to see the arrow facing the timing. So this is the timing. Okay, now we can put this 3.0 back together. So now that the head is torqued, we can go ahead and run the valve clearance with the new shims. Okay, now I can erase the numbers because we won't be needing them anymore, since these are from the old shims. So now with the new shims, we can write down the clearance next to its designated lobe. Let's get it completed. Alright, so my friend actually stayed behind and helped me finish the head. Because when people see that you have the willingness to learn, trust me, they will be more than happy to take the time to teach you. Plus, I always do my best to finish the assignment, since I like to finish what I started. Alright, y'all. Thank y'all for watching me finish up this inline 6-cylinder 3.0 liter cylinder head. And remember, it's not your job to make people understand what your purpose is. FirstClass 1972, signing out. So we gotta fix these two and the 11th out to my left.